don't need a high-end designer or a lot of money to get a luxe look. Be your own interior designer.
This is Affordable Interior Design, the podcast.
Here's your host, Betsy Helmuth.
Stacey is writing in from California, Placerville, California. Hopefully one of those was correct, Stacey. But you write, "Hi, Betsy. Thank you for considering my question. I recently moved from a 1,000 square foot remodeled house in the city to a 2,200 square feet fixer-upper house in the country. I have some furniture from my old house in the new living room, but it just doesn't work here. It's just filling space for now, and there's not enough to fill the space. The room is 22 feet by 16 feet. I've had the baseboards replaced and the painter's coming next week. The walls are going to be Sherwin-Williams alabaster and the baseboards will be Sherwin-Williams accessible beige. I have no idea what to do with this room. What's the best furniture arrangement for a rectangular space like this? Should I put some sort of light or chandelier or maybe two in the ceiling? What kind of window treatments would be best? I don't want to block the view and privacy is not really an issue for us. I plan to turn the wood stove into a fireplace. Should I paint the surrounding stone? Any of the questions you can answer are greatly appreciated. I've attached photos so that you can see the view standing in my dining room and looking down the length of the space to the living room. You can also see standing in the entryway that enters into the living room. And you can see standing opposite side of the living room, looking back into the dining room and entryway. Also, I've included a close-up of the stone fireplace. All right, Stacey, let's dig right in. So the one thing I don't answer on the podcast is furniture layout because I use something called the master layout system where we try every possible option, leaving no stone unturned, really examining the floor plan from all angles so that by the time we come up with the floor plan that's going to work best for you, we know we've tried every viable option. And the reason I do that is so that when you're investing in these pieces, spending that money, you're not questioning, you're not saying to yourself, should I have put the sectional over there? Should I have gotten a right arm sectional versus a left arm sectional? And wait, should I have gotten a bigger rug because it'll fill the space more? Or am I just trying to define this smaller seating area? All those questions are answered when you do your due diligence and try everything in a systematic way. That being said, I'll be able to answer some of your questions here because some of them can just get you thinking more and can apply to many situations for other listeners. So you can be thinking as you're examining your current layout or thinking of a new one, hey, does that fit my situation? Could this be answering my question? All right. So first of all, it is a nice big room, Stacey, and it's got currently kind of very neutral walls, and it sounds like they're going to stay neutral, just get a little more saturated. You've got these beautiful mid-tone wood floors. There is something a little bit funky, and that the fireplace is way over in the corner of the room. So it's not centered. It's on this wall that's cut by an opening. So it is sort of a big feature in the room, but somebody put baby in the corner, right? It's in the narrowest part of the room, far in the corner. Because we know architecturally, fireplaces are the focal point of a room. You would never want to put your back to a fireplace because then you can't see it. So if we know that the fireplace is the architectural focal point, and it would feel weird to put our back when seated on the primary piece of furniture, typically a sofa or sectional, when looking at said focal point, then we know that the sofa or the sectional must face the fireplace. Now, the challenge, if the fireplace is on a very short wall, is that usually people with a fireplace who are designing their living room have one other function. And in a living room, the other function is often TV viewing, which means that there are two focal points, one architectural and one practical, right? Just a choice you're wanting to make because you want to watch TV in this room. And I can see in the pictures you sent that is something that you're planning on doing. But the problem is that you've got the TV in one far away corner on the 22nd foot side of the room, right? And 22 feet away on the other side is the fireplace, and it's actually perpendicular to the TV. So, unless you have all the seating on the opposite wall and it's all just facing forward, you're going to have a hard time looking at both focal points. And also, because the fireplace is perpendicular to the TV rather than being on the same plane, you're only going to be able to see it out of your periphery and maybe not even that well. Typically, I like to keep both focal points on the same plane, or if I'm using a sectional, one arm of the sectional would be angled to face the architectural focal point, that fireplace, and the other arm of the sectional would be focused or facing the secondary focal point. So we have two options. We can put it above the fireplace, right? And let me just go back to the fireplace image. There is plenty of room to put it up there, and your room is quite deep at 22 feet. So you could certainly put it above the fireplace, but then you're going to have to think about your implements, your cable box, any game systems, because there is no room around this fireplace for a media cabinet or anything. So ideally, this would just be a smart TV with absolutely no ancillary boxes or cords or connections. The other option, if you're using a sectional, is that, as I mentioned before, one arm could face the fireplace and then the other could face that opposite wall, which is the wall opposite the window. And that's where you could put the TV so that you could kind of enjoy both from the same piece of furniture. And that wall that I'm talking about that's opposite the windows is another very long wall where you could do a lot of different things. So, as we're thinking that through, those would be some things that I would consider. And then, of course, you have to ask yourself, what other functions do you want to do in this space? Besides sitting comfortably and watching TV and watching the fire, do you need a desk area? Do you need a place to do yoga? Do you need a bar cabinet? These are all things you have to ask yourself when you're creating the layout of a room. I'm working with a client right now in Pennsylvania, and they have a very big family room, even larger than this room. But they have this one nook that they just don't know what to do with. And the only functions they want in the room are comfortable seating for lots of people and TV viewing and fireplace viewing. Well, what are we going to do over there? They don't want a separate reading nook. This is just for entertaining and talking with others. They don't need any storage. They have a whole room adjacent that holds everything that they need. So I don't like to just fill something arbitrarily. Like, let's find something that you want to do. Let's not just purchase random pieces of furniture. So think deeply about the other functions. And once you've established the placement of those primary functions, fill in with the other pieces. Play with it a little bit. Something else I would really recommend is a nice large rug to define the space. Also, your windows are very nondescript. They're not even framed out with wood or anything like that. So window treatments will really help to bring some wow factor to this room. Speaking of wow factor, let's see what else we could do in here to make it come to life. That wall opposite the windows is very big. It's the longest unbroken wall, which typically holds the biggest piece of furniture. But in your case, that may not be practical for a sectional given your focal point conundrum. So we want to make sure that you give that wall the gravitas it deserves. If you're going to put the TV over there, maybe you flank it with bookcases. If you want the TV to be very minimal, maybe you build a gallery wall around it. We need to bulk up whatever you're doing on that big wall so that it takes some of the room's weight and doesn't just look like the empty alabaster elephant in the room. And in terms of light fixtures, I don't see any connections there right now. Certainly, you could add in additional overhead lighting, but if it's not there currently, I would start with lamps. Interior designers generally aren't huge fans of overhead lights because they're kind of like interrogation rooms. They just beat down on you from above, whereas floor lamps, table lamps, lighting on a human level, those create cozy pools of light that I can use to make a space more inviting and also use in a way in terms of task lighting if I'm reading a book or if I'm working at my desk, things like that. A big thank you to Aton and the Embassy who wrote our theme song. A shout out to Catherine Heller who owns the podcast shop and is our editor extraordinaire. We also want to thank Ginny Sunasan and her team at the Savvy Podcast Agency for their help with our social, our YouTube channel, and so much more. We also want to thank Uploft, which is our parent company who supports this podcast. And lastly, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and for all your support.